today I'm going to be making some more books, but instead of just using that cheap faux leather from the dollar store, this time I'm going to be using real leather, and I'm going to be using an antique book. So this book is quite old. I believe it's 1932. It's a music book and it's in pretty rough shapes, but perfect for me to be able to make some miniature books out of. And it's got that old book smell to it, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to be tearing this book apart the same way that I did in my previous video, only this time I'm going to be using real leather and doing these books up a little fancier. So I'm just going to get rid of this old cover, and I'd like to make the books a little bit smaller this time round. So this is basically what I do. I take a ruler and I like to try and see where the actual indent or tab space is and cut it as close to that as possible. But you got to remember, after the books are made, some of it will be trimmed off. So as you can see here, I'm using a dull blade, so I have to snap it off. And if you don't snap them off on a regular basis when you're doing this, then it doesn't cut very well. And to wear protective eyewear is really important when you're using one of these kind of knives. So I'm just cutting it close to the spine as evenly as possible. And as soon as I've got it all cut, then I will be able to split the spine in two pieces so that I can make the books. Now, I guess I could have left it just at that because it is a fairly thin book, but as I say, I want to make these books a lot smaller than I did last time. So it's up to you as to how thick you want to make your book. These ones here, I'm going to do them quite a bit thinner than what I did last time. Now I've got the spine part of the book that I need cut, and now I'm going to be splitting the spine, as you can see here. And it's really sometimes hard to do this evenly, but so sometimes you have to discard a few pages in order to make a nice book. So you can see I've just kind of split it, and I'm going to split this particular book into 4 pieces. So this is piece number 1. So I'm just trying my very best to do a good job of splitting it, but it doesn't matter about that tape because that will be covered when we're done. So you can see here I've now got a little bit of excess there that I have to kind of tear off or trim off. And again, I'm going to split it again and cut it down the spine. So some of the books will be quite thin and some a little bit chunkier. So this one here is a little harder to do because the kind of glue that they used way back when was, oh, it's pretty brittle to cut through. It's quite hard to cut through, actually, compared to doing a modern book. So there you go. You can see I've kind of got it half cut anyways. So now I have to go through and cut the other half. You have no idea how much pressure I'm using on this X-Acto knife to cut this. It's not easy. Kind of a bit of a pain in the butt. The modern books were a little easier to do. You can see here I'm just kind of cleaning it up a little bit. So I had a little bit of paper that I had to actually tear off. And I've got one more section that I want to make. So this last section isn't quite as thick, so I'm just going to split it in half and cut it right down the middle. It's a little harder to do that when it's the full book, but now I've only got just a few pages left. It's a little easier. So there you go. That's perfect. So, and just clean up any raggedy pieces. So you can see part of the printing is still to be seen in it, but when the book is done, you're not going to see any of that because it'll all get cut off at the end. So this is some leather that I purchased from a local leather supply store, and it's just so beautiful and soft, and it's super thin. Um, it's really hard to find leather pieces apparently that are thin enough to be able to do miniatures. This kind of feels like glove leather. It's just absolutely lovely. I'm just taking a ruler here and kind of measuring how wide it has to be for the book covers. And then I'm just going to take an X-Acto knife and trim it up. And oh my goodness, as you can see here, it is just like butter to cut. It's so easy to cut and lovely to work with. And it smells nice too. So this is some extra paper that I have that I'm going to be doing the inside covers of the books with. And the one on the left here is an envelope. And I'm not sure if you recognize this envelope, but Deb, that's the Christmas card that you sent me. So this is from Deb from Doll's House Dilemma. So perfect paper. I'm a hoarder. Anytime I find something that I could possibly use for a miniature, I save it until the occasion happens that I get to use it. So perfect for the inside covers of these books. And then I've got some of this green distressed looking paper. This is scrapbooking paper. So I'm going to use the green as well inside of the book covers. So now I'm just getting ready to glue the inside covers onto the books. So you've got to make sure that when you do it, you've got to make sure they're folded really, really well, and then you glue the folded edge to the spine. So you got to make sure that you put one on the inside and one on the outside, and you've got to make sure that your fold is lined up with the spine of the book. It's really quite easy to do. If you don't fold it really well, then the books will gape open, so you really got to make sure that you run your fingernail down it and make sure it's folded really firmly. I'm just putting some tacky glue on it, and I'm going to be gluing the inside and outside covers to the spine of the book. Now the covers have been, or the inside and outside covers have been glued on. I'm now slathering the entire exterior of the book and the spine with tacky glue, and then I'm going to be putting it on to the leather. It's really hard to do this with tacky glue all over your fingers, but I got to make sure that I get a really tight seal with the leather against the book all the way to the spine. So I'm just folding the leather over and making sure that I've got it really tight against the book. I really want to make sure that these books look beautiful when they're done. So, and I'm just wiping my hands with a paper towel, making sure. Look how nice that looks with the inside covers done up. So I've just got to put some clamps on this and make sure that it dries really well. Then that way I can go back and try my hand at some embossing. My experience in doing these books does tell me that using these clamps actually does make a difference. So I like to clamp them off and then I'm going to let it dry. So it's been a couple hours, and so I'm just going to be trimming the books up. And again, I can't stress how important it is that this knife is sharp, because at this stage, if the knife is not sharp, then it leaves a jaggedy edge, and you want these to be nice and clean. So I'm going to trim off each of the ends and make sure that it's trimmed really nicely. This leather is just absolutely so soft to touch. It's just really beautiful. So, and again, I'm just kind of trimming the ends off just so that I have a nice finished end on each side. And then getting rid of all the excess that I'm trimming off. And so now the object of the game is to get rid of all of that printing that's on the inside. So using a nice ruler to get a good edge on this is really important. You can't just eyeball this. It's got to be done with a ruler. So I'm just cutting the excess off to make them into little books. I can't wait to see for you guys to see what the finished product on these look like. I really, really am so proud of these books. So I don't know why, but to me, I just love a miniature scene or a miniature house that has a full bookshelf. I just think it just adds so much realism to the inside of any kind of miniature scene. I'm taking my time and trying to do a really nice job. So you can see here, that's what it looks like. So, and I really like it with those inside covers in the green. I think it looks really sharp. So now I'm just discarding some of my garbage there. And then there's little pieces of paper all over the place here. So, so you can see here, that's what the book looks like. And, you know, if you want to, when these books are finished, you could actually open them up and write in them. So, which I've done several times. I enjoy creating my own little storybooks, but otherwise you can just use them as is inside of the house. So there you go. There's book number 1, and I'm just gonna trim another one. Oh, that looks good. So I'm quite pleased with that. So that's my first strip of the 4 strips. And as you can see, I got several little books out of it. And I didn't trim them all the same size either, because I want them to look very, different on the bookshelf. I don't want them all to look identical. So that's 1 strip of 4. So that's a fair amount of books we got out of that. So these are the metal stamps that I got at the leather place. It was $13 for this little stamp kit. And they were the only ones that they had there that were small enough to be able to use for my purposes. So $13, I wasn't sure when I purchased them whether or not it was going to be successful. So I thought, well, why not? I've always wanted to try this. So most times when you see stamping on leather, though it's done on veggie tanned leather, it's not done on finished leather the way these books are. So I'm just going to try my best and see if it works. So I'm opening this, as you can see here, for the very first time. And when I filmed doing my first embossing, that's the first time I've ever tried it. You can see all the variations on the stamps. They're pretty neat, actually. So I'm quite pleased with how this turned out. This was like kind of an interesting process. So when you do it on veggie tan leather, you just wet the leather, and then you kind of hammer the stamps onto the leather, and that's how that's done. But because this leather is a finished product, the only way that it can be stamped is as if you heat these little stamps up. So I'm kind of doing it by my own way. So I think that it's a trial and error kind of thing. So I'm not even sure at this point whether or not it was going to work for me. So I've got a little beeswax candle here, a little tea light, and I'm lighting the tea light, and then I'm going to take my little stamp and heat it up really well and see whether or not it works. So here you go. This is my very first go at it. So I put it into the open flame and I want to heat it up. I don't think I can make it quite red hot, but as close to red hot as I possibly can. So I hold it in the flame for almost a full minute, and I just want to make sure that it's really heated well. And at this point, I wasn't sure because even the lady that worked in the leather shop, she said, this leather is way too thin to stamp. And if you try to stamp it, the stamp's going to go right through the leather and burn it. But I thought, well, I want to try it anyways. So, and you can see I'm really pushing on this hard. So, and voila, it appears to be working. So it looks embossed to me. I'm actually kind of shocked. So I'm just heating it up. I flipped the book over and I'm just heating it up, and I'm going to try and emboss the other side as well. So the only problem is I'm making these stamps awfully sooty, so they're going to have to be scrubbed really well after I'm finished with them. So I'm heating it up a second time. I didn't have to heat it as long because it already is quite hot. Even the little handle is a little bit hot. And again, I'm just really pressing it on there super hard. It's not really easy for you to see in the video, but see if I shine the light of the candle onto it, you can see it definitely is embossed. Um, you'll see better at the end of the video. So here's a second one that I'm working on. And again, you can see how hard I'm pressing, like I'm putting a lot of weight onto that. So I wanted to try all of the stamps just to kind of see what they all look like. So, and to make the books all kind of look a little bit different. I can't tell you how pleased I am with the outcome though. They really turned out cute. So here's what they look like. So I used some rub and buff on it, some gold highlighting. I just kind of, it's like a gold grease pencil. I kind of rubbed that onto it just to kind of highlight it. You can see what the inside covers, how pretty that looks. It really gives it a nice finished appearance, I think. So I'm really pleased with these books. I think they're absolutely so cool. I've got to get a really super fine gold magic marker so that I can do some little bit of artwork on the spines of the books. So the ones that I have that are from the dollar store, I don't think that's going to cut it on these ones. I want them to look a little bit nicer than that. So this is what they look like. I'm pretty pleased with them. So a little bit more sophisticated than my last batch of books. And once again, you know, if you want to, you can always like write a story inside of them or draw pictures or make little notes. Yeah, so they're pretty cool. I really like to have books inside of any miniature scene. I think it just really adds something to any miniature scene. Well, thank you very much for watching today. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit that like button. And please tell your friends about my channel. And have the best day ever.